This is Paul Murray Live.
Thank you, Sherry. Hello, friends. Come on into the man cave. Yep, The Voice. It is an absolute shocker. We will power on because that's the only option that we have. There is a lot to get to tonight, including no sooks, no lefties this evening. Now, for years, we have seen politicians of many political stripes, but particularly of the Labor Party, tell us that the answer to Australia's problems is to throw more money at education.
$16.5 billion national education announcement.
See us jump into the future with the kind of investment that education desperately needs.
$16.5 billion in additional Commonwealth funding to public schools across the nation.
And why? Because a significant number of kids are below standard, minimum standards when it comes to literacy and numeracy. Now, this is a problem across the entire country. And yes, while rich and poor is ever so slightly different, the reality is a third of kids in all forms of education are currently struggling. We know this and have known this for some time. This has been around for a long time, but even before all those numbers that you just heard, that was the result. And back then, the Education Minister was saying that he's made it clear that an additional $16 billion of funding for public schools that the government has put on the table will be tied to practical reforms, phonics checks, numeracy checks, evidence-based teaching and catch-up tutoring. There are no blank cheques here. I want to invest billions into our schools and I want to make sure that the money makes a difference. Well, 2 years later, today we get the very latest NAPLAN numbers where, guess what? Things have got worse. Again, I decided in all of the news stories around today to show you the most left-wing version of it. And even they are saying that NAPLAN results, reading and writing worsens in Australian schools, 1 in 3 failing to meet benchmarks. Reading and writing scores are going backwards for almost every age group in Australia's national standardised school tests. 1 in 3 students still failing to meet the NAPLAN benchmarks. What was the spin the government put on it today? NAPLAN results show real improvement in numeracy, but more work to do. A third of kids are not meeting the basic standards. And there was more work to do 2 years ago. Well, now that things have got worse, guess what? According to the Education Minister, there is more work to be done.
Fix the curriculum to make it simpler and easier to teach. A lot of teachers and principals have told us that the first couple of years of the maths curriculum can be complicated and difficult to teach. You've got to teach it in the right order. Maths is sequential. And so you learn different rules or principles. You've got to learn them in the right order to build on that knowledge. So the work that we're doing to fix the maths curriculum is important. I think that's underlined by the results today.
Now, of course, this should be headline news everywhere. It is a national catastrophe. It doesn't matter how many tens or even hundreds of billions of dollars that are thrown into the school system, something is not working. But as long as there's teachers that are openly socialist, as long as there are students that are promising to take to the street and know the difference between right and wrong, and of course that means anything other than the hard left of Australia is considered wrong, hence why they're taking to the streets against Pauline Hanson next week. Who cares, right? Well, you care, I care, and Dr Kevin Donnelly cares. An absolute sane voice in the world of education. He's had a look at these numbers. We will talk to him in just a couple of moments' time. Now, today we've got a couple of insights into the extremism that exists at both ends of the political spectrum. There was a firebombing that took place in Melbourne a couple of years ago, and the police have now come forward to have a terror investigation potentially linked to all of this. This was after Victoria Police were probing a firebombing of the Love Technologies, and it is considered an act of terrorism by far-left extremists. Here's the police explaining what happened.
A firebombing attack that came with sinister threats.
Death to Israel. Death to Australia.
Quickly catching the attention of counter-terror police. A year after cars were graffitied and set alight at Melbourne-based defence contractor Love Technologies, investigators from the Australian Federal Police, Victoria's Joint Counter-Terrorism Team and ASIO confirming they're treating the incident as a terrorism attack.
And why? Supposedly because, of course, connections all back to what's happening in the Middle East. Extraordinary, right? Now, the police came out today and they announced that the Victorian Joint Counter-Terrorism Team is investigating the attack on the Melbourne Defence manufacturer as an act of terrorism potentially orchestrated by far left extremists, anarchists, revolutionary ideas. That's the extreme on the left. We got an insight into the extreme on the right today at the ever disappointing Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism. Spoke yesterday about how that thing went off track. I spoke before even the public hearing started about how this thing had gone off track. Well, a former neo-Nazi, a reformed neo-Nazi apparently, gave evidence today, and he was talking about the people that he was originally surrounding himself with on the far right, referring to them as just angry people. He explains how he got involved in far-right extremism.
In these groups, the line is sold to you that you are the good guys. You know, you're striving for the great white hope. In different circumstances, I'd had people, explain to me that they would rather hang out with a murderer than with someone like me.
Extraordinary. How did he get out? Well, again, that evidence given to the Royal Commission today.
I had some significant upheavals in my life, which led to problems with employment. Me being known for my views was an issue. I had been mixing with people of all different ethnicities, and after taking a good hard look at myself, I realised that the people around me were not upholding the brotherhood and the standards that I always upheld myself.
Now, all of this is to remind you that there is plenty of crazy that exists. It exists on the far left, the far right. Do not fall into the traps that believe because you are a person who has opinions to the left or to the right, then you are the beginning of where these people end up. But where those people have ended up is a frightening place. We need to remain vigilant about it and all and every effort. And again, this is part of the problem for ASIO. They have talked about people who are being radicalised by political ideologies as well as bastardised versions of religions and strength to their arm about how they investigate it, how they squash it out at every possible opportunity. If you are concerned that somebody has gone too far down a rabbit hole, you need to tell someone. Don't worry about confronting them. Tell somebody who might be able to stop them before things get too out of control. Now, as you know, the majority of Australians have a problem with the number of people who have been coming into Australia. Yes, some fractions have problems with whom is coming into Australia, but my argument is constantly about the sheer numbers. There are 28 million people in the country right now. There are 18 million who were here 30 years ago. The joint has forever grown, but really has the infrastructure matched it? There's not a state that doesn't have a problem with its public hospitals or public education. And poll after poll tells us the same thing, that most Australians believe that immigration levels are currently too high. The vast majority believe that immigration is too high. These are all separate polls, by the way. Migrants themselves want to pull down the drawbridge on immigration. They too think too many people coming in too fast. And two people who have always told us that any version of this conversation is some sort of the beginning of a dog whistle, whether you've got a good voice or not, is the Prime Minister and his Home Affairs Minister, effectively the Immigration Minister. And remember, we've been told over and over again that there is nothing but a good story about the number of people that you bring into the country.
That will continue to come down. It will hit 225,000 over the next few years. That is what the objective is. The objective is working.
Well, some sort of scales have fallen off the government's eyes, apparently, because we woke up to two very different stories today. Stories that apparently the government is going to crack down on migration. This is after they promised to do it and failed last time. It's after the budget numbers of 300,000 had already been broken through. And yes, this is all about trying to deal with the Labor One Nation curious voters. They don't care about people that are Conservative voters, former Liberals, current Liberals, former Nats, current Nats, or people that are newfound to One Nation. They only care about the existing Labor support. And if that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%, they want to stop them going to One Nation because that's the difference between majority and minority government, or maybe even opposition completely. So today we wake up that apparently we are going to be changing the focus here. Apparently the focus will move to more onshore visa applicants, i.e. people who are already in the country wanting to become permanent citizens. and stop those that are coming in from overseas. But of course, they've already come in from overseas. So it's a very cute little accounting trick which is being played right here. But the question is this a serious crackdown or is it a cop-out? Now, as you know, Tony Burke was due to make all of this announcement at the home game, that is the National Press Club. The decision was made for him not to make that announcement. Now, this is either because the Labor Party is arguing amongst itself about whether they should be following this path or whether the Prime Minister, when he gets back from the holiday, because remember, he hasn't had a day off this year. So he's out of play this week. He'll be back next week and then maybe he wants to own this from some political perspective. But Pauline Hanson says, don't believe what they say, watch what they do.
He wants to look like he's cutting migration, but he's not. He's lying. What he's doing is moving things around to make the numbers look smaller, but he's allowing people to game the visa system and play Australians for fools.
Jacinta Nampijinpa Price was on with my friend Chris Kenny earlier, making the same point.
It's those socialist members of their cabinet that are helping to destroy this country. And this is just, again, demonstrates a government that is divided behind the closed doors. They're divided. They don't know what they want to press forward with or not. How embarrassing that Tony Burke, as the minister, had to pull out of his National Press Club address at the last minute. And as it is right now, there are more than 2.8 million temporary visa holders since the end of June. We know that immigration is having a detrimental impact on our country, on our infrastructure, on our services, and this government has created that problem.
So here's the deal. Judge them by what they do, not by what they say, because they have told us everything from they're there to help on cost of living. But remember, from day one, $1,500 was automatically on the table for you. They've taken it away. They've given it back with $50 here, $250 there. And then they take it away, they take it away, they take it away. They say they're going to cut migration. Remember, clueless Claire O'Neill was the minister a couple of years ago when they were doing it. Well, guess what? They failed the year after, and now this year as well. Wait, watch and see whether there is something happening below the water, whether as soon as this thought balloon was put up today that people lost their brains about it, or whether it's the Prime Minister trying to pretend that he is fixing a problem that he created. Now, to a very Victorian scandal. Now, you know that on this show I have talked a lot about the central problem with a government, any government that's been around for too long, is the grey corruption starts to kick in. This is when, effectively, if you've been the government for the best part of 30 years, then everyone who is at the upper echelons of the public service has some connection back to the government. And that is exactly what has been happening in Victoria. As you know, the IBAC released a report that was 8 years in the making, with a lot of smoke, but let's be honest, no fire. A lot of noise, but not a smoking gun. But that doesn't mean there's nothing to see here. It is, again, a further conversation about the grey corruption. Now, let's be very clear, no corruption findings against the former Premier in Daniel Andrews, no corruption findings against the firefighters' bosses when they were doing a deal, in part that was about screwing over the Country Fire Authority in Victoria. And today, the firefighters, 8 years in the making, had their moment to turn around and say, thanks for the noise, but you didn't get us.
What they did here is go on a witch hunt looking for a finding that just simply wasn't there. What I do is represent my members. Have I breached the law? No. Have I ever been convicted for doing so? No.
But the problem in Victoria is grey corruption. When too many people have too many connections to the Labor Party, that means potentially they end up having too many connections and too greater access to the union movement. Again, not technically illegal, not technically corrupt, but it sits in this fog of grey corruption. Here's our reporter in Melbourne explaining exactly what was inside the report.
The report also reveals the extraordinary level of contact between senior public servant Tony Bates and union boss Peter Marshall. Mr Bates now holds the position of Secretary for the Department of Education. Over 4 months, they exchanged 381 text messages. IBAC found several were inappropriate for a senior public officer.
So if you feel that there's a lot of noise but there's not a lot of there, as I said, smoke but no fire, gunshot but no smoking gun, okay. The total problem in Victoria, the reason to change the government is the grey corruption. Even if you are a Labor supporter, you need to change the government because The government is not just the Labor Party. As it is in Queensland, it is not just the Labor Party. And it's not the uni party where automatically it has to be the Liberal Party. It could end up being any of the political options that are out there, because those people need to have the ability to have different people who start to thin out the system. Otherwise, you get grey corruption. And thankfully, while researching this today, I found this video from a report from about 4 years ago about grey corruption. The two people you were going to see is the former boss of IBAC, the Corruption Commission in Victoria, and the Ombudsman at that time, Deborah Glass, explaining what the phenomena is.
Grey corruption is characterised by questionable behaviour and decision-making involving a breach of integrity standards that does not necessarily amount to criminal conduct. However, its effect on public confidence in democracy and its institutions is deeply damaging.
And again, the examples that they found, the stuff that is what smells when you get anywhere near Spring Street.
The evidence, public and private, painted a compelling picture of jobs on the public purse, according to factional loyalty and widespread misuse of public resources for political purposes.
Our report illustrates a catalogue of unethical and inappropriate behaviour and concerning practices, and the environment in which such behaviour was able to flourish. They range from the hiring of unqualified people into publicly funded roles, using those roles to support factional work, nepotism, forging signatures, bullying behaviours and attempts to interfere with government grants.
This is the problem. This is what needs to be changed. This is what is constantly being proven about the state of Victoria. Now to the problems in our schools and the NAPLAN performance. Kevin Donnelly is, of course, an expert when it comes to education, and he joins us now. Kevin, what did you see? Because the headlines are not good. What does the detail show you about what's happening with NAPLAN this year?
Well, good evening, Paul. You're right in your introduction. I wrote a book 22 years ago, Why Our Schools Are Failing, and I did a bit of research. I found out that over a third of our students were unsatisfactory when it came to literacy and numeracy. 22 years later, we still have the same problem. There have been generations of young people who've gone through primary and secondary school not being properly educated in terms of the basics. So it's an issue that's been there for many, many years, and today's results don't show any real improvement. There are green shoots every, when I look at reading at year 3, when I look at boys' results in mathematics or numeracy, when I look at girls' results in reading, there are slight improvements, but overall it's still a very damning indictment of those responsible for our schools over the last 22 years.
And we've basically had the same picture for that 22 years, even before you wrote the book, which is the only solution is money, not reorganisation. And then they say, and the education minister's out there saying, well, we now know the reading wars are over and phonics is the way to go. Well, guess what? Even after the billions, even after the recalibrations, lots of numbers are a disgrace.
One of the things that Julia Gillard did when she was Prime Minister was to commission the Gonski Review of School Funding. I'm sure the viewers are aware of that. And what happened then was that the Australian Education Union, the Australian Association Teachers of English, all the academics at the time said the way to improve results, the way to strengthen the outcomes, money, 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 especially for government schools, disadvantaged students. Now, it hasn't worked. We've known this. I've looked at the research internationally, and I knew this 30, 40 years ago, that the best way to really improve standards is not the money, it's having an academic, rigorous curriculum, teachers who are subject experts, teachers who've gone through teacher training, knowing the subject that they're about to teach. You need schools that don't accept failure. We, for too long, have argued disadvantage, disadvantage. We need the school environment, where it's all about doing well, succeeding, and we need parents, in fact, to do more in terms of home, especially when their children are 3 or 4 years old. We need to get rid of the computers, give children books, printed books, storybooks, get them used to print before they go to school.
Yeah, I was noticing today that one of the responses from the New South Wales Education Minister was, in fact, starting to talk about paper and pen again, and again focusing on the analogue. Well, great. I knew that. You knew that. Everyone watching knew that. But fashion takes over, and fashion ends up playing with the future of our country.
We've had this fad, you might remember, we've spoken about it before, I'm sure, whole language, where the idea in primary school was to teach reading by look and guess. Look at the picture. Now, learning to read is totally unnatural. It has to be taught. You need explicit teaching. You need teachers to use a phonics, phonemic aware approach. The problem is, and I've spoken to new graduates, most of our universities, if you look at teacher training, have gone the other way. They're not teaching phonics and phonemic awareness yet. So it's going to take 4 or 5 years for this problem to be addressed at the tertiary level. And meanwhile, our children are suffering. But there are some schools that are doing well. I have to admit that. And the question for Jason Clare or Julian Lisa, the shadow education spokesman, is to look at those schools that are doing better and to try and replicate that for the other schools.
Now, I've got 2 kids in primary school. One is about to go into high school. Obviously, I want nothing but the best. But when I go to school and I get a parent-teacher night, and I very much like their teachers, but what are the questions as a parent, or maybe as a grandparent for some people watching, that we need to be asking the educators?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. Our daughter Amelia, she was in primary school year 4 back in the day. We went to a teacher interview and parent interview, and we realised, Julia and I, when we sat down with Amelia, she couldn't read the printed word. So we'd look at a book and she stumbled over it. So we asked the teacher quite rightly, why can't our daughter read properly? And the teacher said, oh, you read to your daughter? I said, of course we do. And then she said, she'll grow into it. It'll come naturally. Now that's rubbish. So if you're a parent, you need to be very strong. You need to sit your children down every night if you can, read to them, show them picture books, get them used to print. And if they're having trouble, please go up to the school and tell the teacher that they're not doing their job properly, and this is too important just to ignore it.
Last one here, and I'm going to use the national television show to ask a very personal question here, and my girls will be throwing something at the television. But they do read the traditional books, but increasingly this generation likes a graphic novel as well, right? Now, I'm not talking about a comic book. I'm not talking about, it is this sort of hybrid. It is the halfway point. Is that okay when you are trying to put together a love of the physical form, or is there a danger of too much of it? I think my girls are on the right side of it, but what's your advice again? Because there'll be people who see it and think their kids are just reading comic books. They're not. It's something a little higher than that.
I mean, that's a great question. And I know when I was a little boy, we loved Mad magazine. Yeah. Well, some of your viewers will remember. And that was hilarious. But when I look at a lot of the comic books, I call them comic books, a lot of the picture books for young children, a lot of it is quite graphic. It's quite woke. It's quite distressing in some ways. So again, you just need to be very careful as a parent that you monitor what they're looking at, because, I went to see The Odyssey the other day, even though it's not a very good film, I'd argue. But those myths and legends, I think they're more important. There are lots of very good books about fables, about fairy tales, and I think that's what young kids need to know about, because that has a great impact in terms of their emotional and their intellectual and even their spiritual development.
100%. Look, we'll have a chat about The Odyssey at another time, even though it isn't a perfect film. I do want people to see it because, if nothing else, the attention span required for 3 hours is better than a TikTok video. It's better than just flicking through something on your phone, all right? And Alfred E. Newman, I know his work as well. Fantastic man, of course, from Mad Magazine, and that folding bit at the back was always blew my mind how they were able to do that. Thank you, Kevin. Nice to talk to you, mate.
Why? Me worry?
Yeah, exactly. There he is. I was going to say not Alfred E. Newman, but of course a fan of his, being Kevin Donnelly. All right, I rest my throat. We get some guests in here in a moment's time. No Sooks, no lefties. Megan Kelly, thank you very much for sticking with us tonight. We battle on. The only option, right? Thank you so much for watching. With me here to help carry the load is none other than two lovely ladies here in the man cave, which now is the person.
No, don't you bend the knee to that nonsense,
No,
Paul.
I won't, I promise.
It's the man cave, and we are happy to be here.
I'm happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here.
I love this. We are not betrothed, but I felt it ringing. The full power of the light just kicked in. I understand. All right. So, do you think that this government is fair income about clipping the migration question, or it is all just a way of making it seem like that, Michelle?
Of course it's just a way of making it seem like that. This is a house divided. There is no doubt about that. They're trying to tinker around the edges, but, they're in a lot of problems here. We know that migration needs to be curbed. I mean, the economics support this, and this is why the Liberal Party is going really hard on this, because economically it is just not sustainable for this country to keep bringing people in. Look, yes, we need skilled migrants. Yes, of course we do. But there are a lot of things that we need to curb, and one of them is migration. But it is also in the wheelhouse of people who vote Labor. So they are going to be walking a really fine line here.
Well, but also, I love this thing that I saw, Lucy, inside the fine print, which was we're going to focus in on essentially people who are already here, giving people who are the temporaries a chance. So it's not actually about changing the numbers. It's still going to be an increase in population via a different form of paperwork.
And effectively validates what Pauline Hanson came out and said, that she said that they're lying and all they're going to be doing is tinkering with the numbers. And the numbers don't lie. And that's why I find it so difficult to have this conversation, because there is a genuine need for us to debate the metrics, right? This is about the volume of people coming into the country. Yes. But Labor, time and time again, especially the more radical factions within the left, choose to weaponise this discussion and this debate and start calling you all sorts of names and slurs. You're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a xenophobe. It's got nothing to do with that. Let's look at the metrics, right? Treasury have forecast 245K. OK, that's down on what we saw in the 25-26 financial year. 260,000 people. The year before that, 24-25, 306,000. Of course, we saw over 500 kick in after COVID. Yeah. But essentially, these are numbers that are not sustainable, whether it comes, whether it concerns housing, whether it concerns healthcare, infrastructure, schooling. We are a nation under pressure.
Well, and this is it. And I know that lots of people sort of want to argue the cultural side of it. I think that the best place to argue to avoid all of the off-ramps here is just to talk about raw numbers, right? The idea that this country, 30 years ago, 18 million people, 28 now, 30 years from now, we're on our way towards 50, right? No one thinks of the infrastructure. I mean, you've had experience, of course, in local government.
Yeah.
The idea that any suburb can grow by 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 in between local government elections.
Yep.
Massive problems.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at it right now in New South Wales, particularly in Waverley, which is the area that I represent as the Liberal councillor. It is becoming an issue. We've got a state government that is saying you need to have uplift, you need to have all these people. Willara is being forced to take on 20,000 people. We were pretty smart. We came forward with our own master plan to revitalise so we could curb the state significant development. Now, the SSDs that are going to go up, they're going to force a lot of uplift and they're going to force a lot of people into a short amount of space. I get that we have the infrastructure and it makes sense to put it in certain areas, but there are some areas that simply cannot sustain that level of uplift.
Well, and also don't forget with all of this too, there's all these clever little things within things, right? If that is nothing but the lesson of this program, right? And inevitably, right, with new development, there are certain councils that turn around and say, well, there'll be no car spots with these new 5,000 units, right? Because it's all about making sure that it's only public transport, but that only works if you are within a walk of light rail, bus or anything else.
Paulie, I used to live in the east like 7 years ago. There were still no car parks then.
Correct.
So only imagine what further pressure is going to do from a sheer volume standpoint to car parks, your accessibility, being able to get around. I mean, I dive back into Bondi occasionally with the kids now, especially when it comes to summertime. It's impossible. There have been instances...
on Bondi, come on.
Yeah, but it's true. Hey, I live there, so I can comment, and it's from lived experience. There have been times where I've gone there, haven't been able to park and gone, sorry, kids, it's off to the public pool today.
Yeah.
So it's, but see, people... But people aren't considering this. And then you've also got the number of over 413,000 people on bridging visas. And then that also, you know, it doesn't factor in the people who are going in time and time again on appeals and trying to find recourse through the court system, which the taxpayer is paying for. It is insane.
Well, again, and that's where I think the game is here, right? Bridging visas. Well, don't be surprised if, rather than, hey, come over, you're already here. Process. So the numbers will grow artificially through the choices of government. All right, NAPLAN, obviously I just spoke about it with Kevin, but you've written about this in part in connection with the Pauline Hanson protest stuff that'll happen next week. To me, we have seen this story for as long as I've had access to one of these and one of those, which is no matter how much money we put in, we go backwards. That is a national disgrace. But it seems like as long as you come out a lefty, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and it's disappointing. And I've referenced it in the column today because, and I'm not certainly drawing direct correlations between what we're seeing with ambitions to protest against Pauline Hanson and NAPLAN results. Sure. But the reason I reference NAPLAN results is because you've got now 1/3 of students that are failing to meet literacy and numeracy expectations, right? Hundreds of thousands of kids who are so markedly behind that you've got academics at La Trobe University calling it a national tragedy. What are we doing to address all of these things as a nation? As you said there, time and time again, we're seeing these stories. And I know that NAPLAN from 2023 introduced much more stricter and harsher marking methods, which is why we've seen more of a decline in results. But if you can't meet basic standards, we need to find out why. So I referenced the NAPLAN results at a time where what we're seeing is high schoolers and university students give more of a damn about the evils of capitalism and suggesting that capitalism is the fault of the nation and that capitalism is the reason why sexism exists. I mean, I'm watching these kids who could have been no older than Paulie, maybe 14, 15, 16, screeching into a camera and thinking about taking a day off because, you know, socialism's the way. It's absolute and utter nonsense. So there are several conversations that we can have within all of this, but I think we need to highlight the fact that we need to be doing more as a nation and addressing why our kids are falling behind.
Well, also, look, it's this thing, and it's no grand revelation if you've been paying attention. I've said it a few times, right? Like, I'm a high-functioning dyslexic, plenty of ADHD bouncing around in my head here. So, and being a parent trying to help kids get their head around things, right? And inevitably they inherit a bit of this, a bit of that. This is the opportunity to improve yourself. Education is the opportunity to improve yourself, to be able to start to have the tools to be able to overcome whatever it is that maybe your mum and dad or your parents had. Now, I've obviously had a great run, but there are plenty of people who may not even be hearing of this program, but they are sitting in a world of pain. And I think that the emphasis is all about all that other crap rather than whoever you are, struggling kid at the back versus the show off at the front, trying to help everyone get to a place that's better than when you walked in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a 13-year-old boy and I see it with him as well.
How could you? You're 21.
I know. Don't look a day over 21. No, but he, you know, he really struggled when he was younger and he's like put the time and the effort in. But we are seeing a lot of that kind of ideology seeping into the classroom and less about like the basics, the math and all of that. But another really interesting point, and I've heard a lot of people speak about this, these are children that are also from a COVID era as well. So they have learned...
ruined them.
It ruined them.
I hate everyone who made that choice.
No, and it really ruined them
do.
because what they're saying, there is a correlation between children taking days off and not taking school as seriously because they were never taught to go during a pandemic. Sure. So I do think we need to take that into consideration. I do think we have a whole generation who are growing up who thinking it's okay if they have a little sore throat or if they have a headache that they can lie in bed all day.
Correct.
And then sprinkle in a bit of socialism ideology where you blame the government for all of your problems and say that taxing the rich is the only way out of this. Yeah. And all of a sudden you've got a cocktail of disaster here.
Correct.
Seriously.
Look at all this common sense of man cave.
Just need the women.
Go on the man. Go on the man cave.
All right, God love you. Now, Tanya Plibersek has a good point. Oh, no, relax, everyone, settle down. Because she's pointed out how images are one thing but end up being used for a completely different purpose, right? So this is an original photo of a bunch of front benches inside the Parliament, but then AI has turned it all around where they're all suddenly now in designer outfits. Now, let's be honest, if you are the average person, and I know that Plenty of times you've, of course, appeared on the Quizzical program being asked, is it real AI or not? Both of
Yes, we have. Yeah, totally.
You had a good skill.
I have
when it
got a
came
good
to
skill.
that.
Look, I could tell that was AI just simply because they wouldn't dress that well in Parliament. I've yet to see a parliamentarian dress that well.
But
Sorry,
they
that was
could
a bad,
afford to if they wanted to.
They could.
That's the crime.
They could. But look, I do think she makes a really valid point here, and there is something that we really need to discuss, and that is the permissiveness of AI, particularly when it comes to media and particularly when it comes to what people are consuming. We're looking at TikTok, we're looking at social media. That is how people are consuming news right now. They are ready and willing to believe anything because it's being served to them on a silver platter, not to mention our children being served, fakes, all kinds of messes.
Well, but what's interesting, and again, my kids do this, they like the game of being able to say, that's fake, Dad.
Yeah.
Like they love to point it out to you, right? That said, technology only gets better where there's going to be times when, and again, this was the game that you played on telly with James McPherson, right? That real stuff sometimes looks fake stuff sometimes look real, and that's the frightening part of where we're headed here, right?
Yeah, good luck trying to stop this now.
No.
What do you do? How do you actually police this? How do you legislate it? How do you manage it? And I mean, I know that there are so many exciting elements to the advent of AI. I listened to the podcast with Elon Musk. I mean, the world that he's painting and predicting years from now is so, for me, divorced from reality. Yeah. But, and then I speak to other academics, people who are very, very intelligent and well-versed in this space, who actually say that it's not something that we should fear. Yes, there are going to be little, side street consequences like this where we don't really like it. I mean, even as a journalist, the amount of things that I have to fact check now, look over time and time again, I actually would argue that it's a lot harder now because you don't know what's fact and what's fiction. But I dare say that even though people are being braced for this world where we're not using as much of our brains, we're being tested a lot more now than ever before. You have to use discernment. There is more critical thinking involved and research and investigation. Is what I'm getting the truth or is this misinformation?
We're just forming more neural pathways, just in different ways.
Half full, half empty. That's what I like. Now, as you know, cigarettes long gone from the public square, certainly from their ability to be connected to sport. The move is on right now when it comes to gambling advertising, and guess what's on its way next? Booze bans. Why? Because apparently every major football team, be it male or female, be it AFL, rugby union, soccer, whatever, has some connection to alcohol sponsorship. Now, I might get myself into trouble here, but I don't mind because at the end of every message is drink responsibly, and if you go too far, that's not the fault of the advertiser, in my view, at this stage. But they love... This is the case is built the same way every time, which is look where it is, look how dangerous it is, ban it, ban it, ban it, ban it.
I do think it's a really fine line here because on one hand we do have like the issues that are surrounding alcohol and also people in sport. We do know that domestic violence instances do go on the rise on grand final nights. We do know that is a problem. But on the other hand, people can make their own decisions. People are quite capable of understanding that this is bad, that they should not be overindulging and that, it could lead to some really nasty consequences. I think we need to take government out of things a little bit more. Shock horror, I'm a Liberal. And maybe let's just rely on people being able to make their own minds up.
Thank you very much. Because you know what? It's refreshing to hear because I think so many people obviously look at the two issues, right, which we see, the very sad and dire consequences of both substance abuse, of both gambling addictions, etc. I've seen firsthand how it can destroy families and lives. And I know also that we've seen that evidence that Luke Bateman, the former Canberra Raider player, gave in the Senate inquiry this week, which is very confronting and very jarring. And I don't want to sound insensitive when I make the following points, all become a headline tomorrow. But do you know what I really struggle with? People constantly blaming external forces when we exist in a world where choice is the very first thing that is at your disposal. My husband was a former professional footballer, right? He's never touched drugs. And when we got together, I knew exactly where he was at every minute of the day because he was at home with me every night. He took his career very seriously. I had brothers represent this country as well. I've seen people have it all and blow it all, not because of the fault of the substance, because of the decisions that they made. And I think we have to be very fair and brutal in this. Alcohol is legal, so are cigarettes, and so is gambling. And for as long as they are, as evil as they can be, for the vast majority of people who use them responsibly, I think we got to let live a little bit.
There is no doubt that you would be the most loving and wonderful wife, but God forbid if you lied to you. If anyone lied, I was out with my mates.
He has.
Imagine.
He has.
Oof.
He admitted to me the other day he went fishing with his mates, and I said, guess what, darling, I lied to you too. One time I went to the casino with a girlfriend while your parents were visiting. Now we're even.
Megyn Kelly, just fix that place.
Let's go.
That time of the week to talk to our favourite person in the world, the one, the only, the wonderful Megyn Kelly. Megyn, how are you? Any tips for how to fix this?
Just tea with honey. That's all I ever do. And if it gets really bad, you got to resort to the steroid course, which gives you on-air roid rage, but actually does tamp down the throat inflammation. So let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Now, I want to focus in on one subject tonight. We've talked a lot about these new far-left politicians that have turned up, but there is a particular sort of America-hating and, frankly, white-hating angle to at least one of them. This is somebody who wants to be a governor in a state, and previously they've said that they want to cancel things like the American holiday of Thanksgiving. Watch her dance around that now.
Do you still believe that Thanksgiving should be canceled?
I'm a chef, and one of the first meals that I made that was for the community when I was 16 was a Thanksgiving meal. But Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities.
But this isn't the only stupid that this woman has said. In fact, she's got a problem with whiteness.
I wasn't always aware of the struggles of other communities of color because for me, assimilation always kind of took over. And so I did marry. My proximity to whiteness continues, right? My son is biracial. He's half white and half Korean.
Okay, so her name is Francesca Hong, and she's running for governor of Wisconsin on the Democrat ticket. So she wants to win this primary, and then she's going to run against the Republican if she gets it. And she's overwhelmingly favored to get the nomination, amazingly. The last two polls I've seen put her up 30 points over her Democratic opponent, and then the more recent one up 22 points. But I mean, we are talking massive double digits for this woman, and it's inexplicable. If you look at her and, I mean, listen to her for 2 minutes, 1 minute will do it. You can see she is a radical nutcase. I mean, there's something like deeply wrong with this person. She wants to get rid of the Pentagon, the U.S. Senate, prisons, also the presidency. She would like to get rid of police as well. So we've got prisons, the police, the Pentagon, the presidency, the U.S. Senate. So we're going to have a unicameral legislative government above us, none of which, I mean, this basically requires us to, not basically, it does require us to throw out the U.S. Constitution and start anew. So really meaningful reform she's pushing for. Obviously, she wants to defund ICE and all of that, and Medicare for all, and a 32-hour work week, you know, mandated, like you can't change it. Okay, sure. I can't wait to see who's going to pay for all of that. But these are her proposals. And her latest pitch has been to say that she understands, she gets white privilege because she's Asian, but that her son is half Korean and half white. And therefore, she's been in the proximity of whiteness. And she sees what that will do for someone. She speaks, of course, of her 10-year-old son. So she is willing to bastardize her own child and his privacy for the sake of getting a leg up on the whiteness argument. It's not that she can see how well whites have it with her eyes, and she wasn't content to make the argument that way. She had to throw her son under the bus because whatever advantage Junior's getting, I guess we're left to presume, is as a result of the white half. Like, people are looking at this mixed race child, and while they may see that he looks slightly Asian, he's white enough that he's getting the advantages. That's how I follow her logic. To be perfectly honest, she was unclear there, as she has been in virtually everything that she has said. But yeah, she is definitely touting her son's whiteness as the reason why she understands The proximity is why she understands what whiteness means in America.
But also, this is all just babble, right? Like college babble, all adjacent to whiteness. What the hell does that even mean?
Why doesn't she just stick with him? Or, you know, like a neighbor, someone you've met. It's not hard to find white people, at least yet, in the United States. Pick anyone and make your argument. Who would have the instincts of throwing their child into the debate in this way? I mean, now everybody's going to want to get a picture of that kid. Now they're going to post him in the newspaper and say, here he is, half Korean, half white. Like, she's opening him up to fair game sport. And there are evildoers who will take advantage of that and say look, we never did this when Tim Walz put his daughter up at the Democratic National Convention. But plenty of people did. If you want to put your child front and center in American politics, unfortunately, there will be a nasty crew that will exploit it.
And Megan, a lot of us complain about what's happening here, but give me an idea about why you think it's happening. Is it happening because people are getting crazier? Is it happening because the Republicans got crazier? Is it happening because people are so desperate in search of an answer that they're willing to go to the crazy end of the pond to get it?
I think it's two things. I think it's Israel and it's economic pain. They genuinely are in economic pain. And even though the objective measures of the economy show it is improving under Trump, the problem with inflation is it doesn't really go away. You know, once it ran up to 9, sometimes 11% under Joe Biden, unfortunately, you're not stuck there forever, but price inflation is now baked in. So while you can get it down, you can get inflation down to the 3s as it is now. It was at 11, now it's 3. Some of that 11 is still baked into the 3% number. And so people really are hurting, and they are correct to notice that they're paying more for their groceries, for their homes, for their cars, and now for their gas, thanks to this Iran war, and wage growth hasn't kept up. So they're frustrated. And, you know, there's just so many reasons why now all their jobs are being threatened, the white collar ones, with AI, and there seems to be this sort of shoulder shrug about that too. No one really cares. So they're feeling resentful.
So good to talk to you, Megan. Enjoy the summer. I will rest my throat and we will see you next week.
All right, see you soon. Feel better.
Thank you so much for watching. Late Debate, a couple of minutes away from now. We all work way too hard, and of course, so that means we pay our taxes. It means we have the politicians, and they waste our money all day, every day, including on staff members who make bad social media videos for them, including this one from Patrick Gorman, the Labor MP for Perth.
You can achieve a lot in 5 minutes' time. You can make a cup of tea. You can listen to an Aussie tune. Kick a footy. Call your mum to say hi.
Oh, how pandering. Or you could save yourself 30 seconds of watching that over and over and over again. Fair dinkum. This is another one. This one is about workplace changes from a Labor MP. Again, you pay for this. That's why I show you this every single night. You are kidding me. Again, the John Hamm thing. Welcome back to 2025, right? And Ali France, who of course took over from Peter Dutton as the member for Dixon. What's her social media output at the moment? Sorry, I need to say that again because I need everyone to understand that there was the chance of an alternative Prime Minister or this. Fair dinkum, these people, honestly. Again, it's the patronising nature of it. It's the talking down to everyone like a kid. It's also a lovely way of me being able to try and throw James and the gang off their game when it comes to the late debate, because I'm sure they're ready for a very serious discussion, and then they get this is the throw each and every night. I will do so again tomorrow night. Make sure you follow us on the socials, and we'll see you again on News 24.